Just a few months ago, and even way back when the show was first announced, I was not excited for Agatha All Along, or any of the other names that it was going by, and that could come down to the fact that no matter how good it was still going to be a couple years too late, or that I'm just not very interested in seeing the adventures of this particular character. But during the show's advertising lead up, Aubrey Plaza was the one that managed to get me interested enough to sit down and watch this 2-episode premiere, with her hinting at some crazy character revelations and a fun story in general. Welcome to Sandwich Reviews. I'm the Talking Sentient Sandwich, and from the first minute alone, I knew April Ludgate wasn't kidding. And I can't really get into my thoughts about this show's premiere without spoiling the premise, so make sure you've seen both of the episodes that we've gotten so far of Agatha All Along. Though, who am I kidding? If you're watching this, you've already seen them. But let's start with the first half of episode 1, because I should have expected that Wanda's hex breaking down would be the catalyst for the narrative, even though that isn't at all what the show is altogether. Nevertheless, it was great to see all the returning actors from WandaVision, and I perked up whenever there was another. But everything in that first episode was so well done. Just had me gushing at the half-parody, half-reverent imitation of true crime procedurals. My first thought was True Detective, but the fake name that the intro had was clearly most inspired by the mayor of Easttown. Side note, the intro saying the character names and not the actors' names wasn't super meta or genius, but it was still a nice touch to get the viewers prepared for what the show was going to be. Regardless, the way that everyone dialed up their acting to 11 while still fitting that grounded tone was incredible to me. Walking that tightrope of not being too self-serious and also not feeling like it's just going from one skit to the next. And paired alongside the phenomenal acting, the choice of camera placement, and even the lens that they used all came together to make the spoof as authentic as it possibly could be. Then, the walls started to come down around her as the spell started to, become less powerful. And that led to the fun scene of Agnes bad-copping Billy, and the pictures and one-sided mirrors switching to different objects had me very intrigued. I mean, the yelling and notebook throwing was a little too much, but it was supposed to be. But really, it was the scene where she broke out that got me fully on board with the show. The way she was black and white and everything else was in color was such a good effect. Yet it was the hanging light swinging back and forth, being the cherry on top of that fantastic moment that cemented it in my mind. Whoever thought of putting that light there probably made the VFX artist's job more difficult, but it was a good call. Honestly, I thought the idea of Agatha attempting to break out of a weakened hex could have made for a show in and of itself, but it wasn't like anything that episode did was rushed. Though the show probably could have just skipped all that and went right into Billy getting Agatha to take them both to the road. It was well done, but I can't deny that it was all hamstrung by WandaVision's ending, because before we got to the actual plot, the story had to get Agatha free first. Also, who is Joe Locke playing? I know I just said he was Billy earlier, but I'm not confident that's the case. I'm 99.9% sure, but you never know. I could be wrong. And it's not like there isn't a mystery to unpack there, with his mouth being sewn shut or his audio being drowned out whenever he tried to explain who he was. But anyway, following all that, there's a cool witch fight that for a second gave me Gandalf vs. Sauron vibes, but only for a second, because then they got more stabby. And while I liked this, I do hope we get better magic battles later on. I'm willing to give this a pass because Agatha didn't have any powers, but I'm expecting a lot. Most of the next episode is spent bringing their coven together, and let me tell you, I enjoyed that as well. Meeting all the different personalities that would make up the cast got me excited to see how they would interact. One or two are a bit one note, but I'm sure they'll get more focus in the coming episodes. Overall, the show is a lot more mature than I expected, and I'm here for it. There's nothing crazy, just some minor nudity and blood, but I wouldn't show this to my kid, if I had a kid. Moments like when Salem 7 or whatever was going after them, with them almost looking like ring wraiths, attempted to dip into horror, but if they were going to go that far, I wish they went further with it. The choir-like chanting over top was incredible and really established the right tone, but it just wasn't as terror-inducing as it could have been. However, it wasn't like that was the only thing that the show was setting out to do. And it's not just that it's entertaining, because it is, but it's also downright hilarious. There's more than a few jokes that got me to chuckle, such as Agatha calling out how witches historically haven't done well in court, or Herb just saying, "You seeing this?" But there was one moment I found so hysterical, I couldn't stop laughing. And that was when Kitty from that 70s show resigned herself to singing the backup chorus. And that alone isn't funny, but once she started to get into the groove of it, dancing along, she became an integral member of the coven to me. And going in, I was worried Agatha's villainy would be toned down, as is the case for every villain that's gotten a spin-off. But the writers have already conveyed that they'll show that side of her, with her even trying to betray the Coven at one point. But getting back to the plot, because they all go down the steps to the Witch's Road, and I am very glad Kitty followed them. But my one question about all of that is this going to be the show's whole plot? I don't know anything about the Witch's Road in the comics, but I assume there will be many trials, challenges, and perhaps even a riddle or two involved. I'm just not sure if that'll make for a whole miniseries' narrative. Yet I don't doubt that there's a lot more that will unfold as the show goes on. But before I conclude, I have a couple random last notes to end on, because the stylized episode title cards were awesome. I mean, it was only a black screen and a fancy font in white, but I can't remember if any of the other Marvel shows have put the episode name in the show. Please correct me in the comments, because I would love to be wrong about that. And lastly, of the many mysteries that I can't wait to find the answer to, Aubrey Plaza's character is the biggest one. I'm still dying to know the origins of Billy, but I need to know if Aubrey Plaza is playing a character that someone like a nerd like me would recognize. That doesn't have to be the case. She could be an entirely new creation for the show for all I care, but I can't help but be intrigued. The name Blackheart came up, and there is a magic-wielding demon in the comics by that name, but I have a feeling that was just a red herring. But if that is the case, funnily enough, it wouldn't be the first time we've seen that character in live action. He was played by Wes Bentley in the first Ghost Rider. Look it up if you don't believe me. But that doesn't matter, because what does matter is your thoughts on the first 2-episode premiere of Agatha All Along. Did you hate it? Did you love it? Are you excited to tune in next week and see what the Witch's Road is going to demand? Leave a comment and let me know. And as always, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for weekly video essays and reviews, and enjoy a delicious sandwich.